Princess Zaratiel of the Valdorian Empire stood on the crystalline balcony of the royal palace, her violet eyes blazing with defiance as she watched another suitor's ship descend through the amber clouds of her homeworld. The vessel gleamed with the polished perfection typical of the Kethmoran nobility, all smooth curves and pretentious gold inlays that made her stomach turn. This would be the 14th suitor this cycle, and she already knew how this meeting would end. The princess was nothing like what the galaxy expected from Valdorian royalty, where her people were known for their elegant composure and diplomatic grace. Zara possessed a wild spirit that had earned her a reputation across 3-star systems. Her silver hair, traditionally worn in elaborate braids by noble women, hung loose and untamed down her back. Instead of the flowing robes of court fashion, she wore practical leather and metal that allowed her to move freely, much to her mother's constant dismay. "Your Highness," came the familiar voice of Chancellor Thaimon from behind her. The elderly Valdorian's blue-scaled skin had taken on a worried pallor that had become his permanent expression whenever dealing with the princess. "Prince Kelvith of the 7th House has arrived for the formal presentation. Your presence is required in the Great Hall." Zara didn't turn around. "Tell me, Thaimon, what makes this one different from the others? Does he also believe that marrying me will give him access to our quantum foundries? Or perhaps he thinks my dowry includes the secret to our crystalline energy matrices?" The Chancellor's throat sac inflated slightly, a sign of his growing anxiety. "Princess, your father expects you to at least meet with Prince Kelvith. The 7th House controls 17 mining worlds, and their fleet is built on outdated ion propulsion, and their mining operations strip worlds bare without any thought for ecological balance." Zara finally turned, her eyes flashing. "I've done my research on every one of these suitors, Chancellor. They see our kingdom not as a partnership, but as a prize to be won." She strode past him with a fluid grace that marked her as true Valdorian nobility, despite her unconventional ways. "But very well. I'll meet this Prince Kelvith. I'm curious to see how quickly I can make him flee." The Great Hall of the Valdorian Palace was a marvel of architectural engineering. Massive columns of living crystal stretched toward a domed ceiling that displayed real-time images of the cosmos beyond their world. The floor was polished black stone inlaid with silver that formed constellation patterns, and the walls themselves seemed to pulse with a gentle bioluminescent glow. King Aldrichthon sat upon the starlight throne, his regal bearing intact despite the weariness in his ancient eyes. Beside him, Queen Lisanelle maintained her composed smile, though Zara could see the tension in her mother's shoulders. They had been through this routine too many times. Prince Kelvith stood in the center of the hall, and Zara had to admit he cut an impressive figure. Tall even by Kethmoran standards, his muscular frame was enhanced by ceremonial armor that caught the light of the crystal columns. His facial ridges were pronounced and symmetrical, considered the height of male beauty in his culture. When he saw Zara enter, his eyes lit up with obvious appreciation. "Your Majesties," Kelvith began, his voice carrying the trained cadence of nobility, "I am honored beyond measure to stand before the Starlight Throne. And Princess Zaratiel." He turned to her with what she assumed was meant to be a charming smile. "The stories of your beauty pale before reality itself." Zara raised an eyebrow. "How interesting. I wasn't aware my appearance was the subject of intergalactic gossip. Tell me, Prince Kelvith, what exactly have these stories told you about me?" There was something in her tone that made the prince hesitate, but he recovered quickly. "They speak of the most beautiful princess in 3 sectors, blessed with the wisdom of her father and the grace of her mother. A worthy bride for any ruler." "How disappointing," Zara said, moving to stand directly in front of him. Even with her considerable height, she had to look up slightly to meet his eyes. "None of those stories mention that I've personally designed modifications to our defensive grid that increased efficiency by 37%, or that I've led 3 successful diplomatic missions to resolve border disputes without bloodshed. Strange how those accomplishments seem to get lost when people discuss potential wives." The prince's confident expression faltered slightly. Of course your intelligence is renowned as well, princess. A ruler needs a wise consort. A consort. Zara's voice dropped to a dangerously quiet level. You seem to misunderstand the nature of Valdorian succession, prince. Our throne doesn't pass to male heirs exclusively. I am not seeking a husband to rule for me. I am the future queen of Valdoris. King Aldrich cleared his throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should move to more formal discussions in the council chamber. Prince Kelvith, I'm sure you have proposals regarding the mutual benefits an alliance between our houses. Indeed, your majesty, Kelvith replied, seeming relieved to move away from his increasingly uncomfortable conversation with Zara. The Seventh House is prepared to offer substantial military support and exclusive trading agreements. In return, we seek access to Valdorian crystal technology and a formal alliance sealed by marriage. As they moved toward the council chamber, Zara noticed several things about Prince Kelvith that confirmed her suspicions. His armor, while beautiful, was purely ceremonial, the kind worn by nobles who commanded from safety rather than leading from the front. His hands were soft and uncalloused, showing no signs of the physical work that came with actually understanding technology or warfare. Most telling was how he positioned himself during the discussion, consistently trying to place himself between Zara and her parents, as if already assuming authority. The council chamber was smaller than the Great Hall, but no less impressive. The walls were lined with star charts and strategic displays showing the current political situation across their sector of the galaxy. A holographic table dominated the center, currently displaying the relative positions of the Valdorian Kingdom and the Seventh House territories. Prince Kelvith activated a small projection device, filling the space above the table with images of his fleet and mining operations. As you can see, the Seventh House controls significant resources. Our military consists of 800 ships of the line, with 3 full battle groups and extensive support vessels. Zara studied the display with growing disdain. The ships were exactly what she had expected. Large, heavily armed, but built with outdated technology. Their power cores were inefficient, their shields were generations behind current standards, and their weapon systems relied on brute force rather than precision. Your fleet is impressive in size, she admitted carefully, but I notice your vessels still use focused plasma arrays for primary weapons. Most military analysts consider those obsolete against modern shielding systems. Kelvith's jaw tightened slightly. Plasma arrays have proven their effectiveness in countless engagements. Sometimes traditional methods are superior to experimental technologies. Experimental? Zara almost laughed. Prince, synchronized particle beam networks have been standard among advanced civilizations for over 50 cycles. The Mektari Collective, the Zenith Commonwealth, even the Terran Federation, they all abandoned focused plasma decades ago. The mention of the Terran Federation caused a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only a few centuries ago. Yet in that short time, they had gained a reputation as exceptional engineers and warriors, though many of the older civilizations still looked down on them as upstarts. The humans, Kelvith said dismissively, are clever with their machines, I'll grant you that. But they lack the cultural sophistication and historical perspective of established civilizations. Their rise has been rapid but shallow. Zara felt her temper flare, though she kept her expression neutral. Shallow? The Terran Federation has solved 3 major interstellar conflicts through technological innovation and diplomatic creativity. Their adaptive engineering has revolutionized everything from starship design to ecological restoration. I'd hardly call that shallow. Queen Lisanel placed a gentle hand on her daughter's arm. Perhaps we should focus on the specific terms of the proposed alliance, she suggested diplomatically. For the next 2 hours, they discussed trade agreements, military cooperation, and territorial considerations. Kelvith proved to be exactly what Zara had expected. Conventional in his thinking, focused primarily on how the alliance would benefit his house, and possessed of the casual arrogance common among nobles who had never had their assumptions truly challenged. When the formal negotiations concluded, Zara excused herself from the traditional feast that would follow. Instead, she made her way to her private workshop in the lower levels of the palace, a space that would have shocked most visitors to the royal court. The workshop was a chaotic blend of advanced technology and hands-on engineering. Holographic displays showing complex equations floated beside workbenches covered with half-assembled devices. Crystal matrices in various stages of modification glowed softly in specialized containment fields. The air hummed with the subtle energy of active experiments, and the scent of ozone and heated metal pervaded everything. This was where Zara truly felt at home. Away from the politics and ceremony of court life, she could focus on the work that actually mattered, pushing the boundaries of what Valdorian technology could achieve. Her current project was a new shield harmonic system that could potentially revolutionize defensive capabilities across the fleet. She had been working for perhaps an hour when Naimon appeared at the workshop entrance, looking deeply uncomfortable. The Chancellor had never been entirely at ease with the princess's technical pursuits, viewing them as unseemly for royalty. "Your Highness," he began carefully, "Prince Kelvith has made his formal proposal. He offers a marriage contract with extremely generous terms for military alliance and technology sharing." Zara didn't look up from the delicate crystal matrix she was adjusting. "And I suppose Father expects me to give serious consideration to this proposal?" "He does. The prince's resources could significantly strengthen our position, particularly given the increasing tensions with the hegemony. War may be coming, princess, and we cannot stand alone." That made Zara pause in her work. The Karathi hegemony had been growing increasingly aggressive in recent cycles, expanding their territory through conquest and enslaving entire populations to work their war machines. Intelligence reports suggested they were massing forces for a major offensive, though their exact targets remained unknown. "You're right that we need allies," Zara said finally. "But Kelvith isn't offering partnership. He's offering subjugation wrapped in diplomatic language. His people would gain access to our most advanced technologies while we get outdated ships, and the privilege of being absorbed into his house's hierarchy." Thymon's throat sac inflated with his characteristic anxiety. "Princess, you may be too particular in your requirements for a suitable match. Perhaps it's time to consider what's practical rather than what's ideal." Zara set down her tools and turned to face the Chancellor fully. "I'm on. I've rejected 14 suitors in the past 2 cycles. Every one of them saw me as either a political prize or a pretty ornament to enhance their status. Not one has ever asked about my work, my ideas, or my vision for our kingdom's future. They want to marry the Princess of Aldoris, not Zaratil the person. Your Highness, marriage among nobility has always been about alliance and advantage. Personal compatibility, while pleasant, is hardly essential." "Perhaps that's the problem," Zara replied. "Perhaps our entire approach to diplomacy and alliance building is fundamentally flawed. We arrange marriages like trade agreements and wonder why our partnerships lack genuine loyalty and trust." Before the Imam could respond, an urgent chime echoed through the workshop. Zara quickly activated a holographic communication terminal, and the image of Admiral Korvac appeared, his scarred features grim with concern. "Your Highness, forgive the intrusion, but we have a developing situation. A small craft has entered our system and is requesting emergency assistance. The vessel appears to be of Terran design, but it's badly damaged and barely maintaining life support." Zara felt a sudden spike of interest. "Terran? That's unusual. They rarely venture this far into unclaimed space without good reason. What's their status?" "Single occupant, unconscious when we made contact, but vital signs are stable. The ship's automated systems are handling the distress call." More interesting is the craft itself. The damage patterns suggest they encountered hegemony forces and somehow escaped. "Bring them to the main docking bay," Zara ordered immediately. "Full medical support, and I want a complete technical analysis of their vessel. If they tangled with the hegemony and survived, I want to know how." As the communication ended, Zara was already moving toward the exit, Behind her, Thaimon called out in dismay. Princess, Prince Kelvith expects your answer regarding his proposal. Then, he'll have to wait, Zara called back without turning around. I have more important matters to attend to. The main docking bay was a vast space designed to accommodate everything from small diplomatic shuttles to massive cargo haulers. As Zara arrived, she could see the Terran vessel being carefully guided into position by the palace's automated docking systems. The human ship was unlike anything she had seen before. Where most vessels followed predictable design patterns, sleek curves for speed, angular surfaces for intimidation, or crystalline geometries for energy efficiency, this craft seemed to blend multiple approaches into something entirely unique. Its hull showed clear signs of recent combat damage, with scored armor plating and what appear to be improvised repairs using materials from at least 3 different technological traditions. Medical teams were already standing by as the ship settled onto the docking platform. Zara watched with fascination as the vessel's airlock cycled open, and the unconscious human was carefully transferred to a medical pod. Even unconscious and injured, she could see why humans had gained such a reputation throughout the galaxy. The figure was smaller than most galactic species. Humans rarely exceeded 6 feet in height, but there was something about their build that suggested efficiency rather than weakness. The clothing was practical rather than decorative, and even damaged, their equipment showed signs of constant modification and improvement. But it was the ship itself that truly captured Zara's attention. As the technical teams began their preliminary examination, she could see innovations that challenged her understanding of conventional engineering. The power distribution network used principles she didn't immediately recognize, and the weapon systems appeared to integrate technologies from at least 5 different species into a coherent whole. Remarkable, she murmured, stepping closer to examine the hull plating. They've managed to create adaptive armor that incorporates both Valdorian crystal matrices and Kethmoran metallurgy. But this arrangement shouldn't work. The resonance frequencies are completely incompatible. Yet somehow it does work, came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Chief Engineer Valkyris approaching, his multiple arms already gesturing enthusiastically as he studied the vessel. Princess, I've never seen engineering quite like this. Every system appears to be custom-modified, but not randomly. There's an underlying logic that's both alien and brilliant. As they examined the ship more closely, Zara began to understand what made human engineering so distinctive. Where other species tended to perfect a particular approach and stick with it, humans seem to treat every problem as an opportunity to combine different solutions in unexpected ways. Nothing was purely standard, yet everything worked together seamlessly. The medical team leader approached with an update on their patient. The human is stable, but will likely remain unconscious for several more hours. Interesting physiology, much more resilient than their size would suggest. We've also found this. She handed Zara a small device that had been recovered from the pilot's equipment. It appeared to be some kind of portable computer, but the interface was unlike anything in standard galactic databases. The screen showed text in the angular script humans use for their written language, but even more intriguing were the technical diagrams visible in the background. Can we translate this? Zara asked. Already working on it, Princess. Our linguistic algorithms should have basic translation protocols active within the hour. But from the preliminary scans, it appears to contain detailed technical specifications and what might be intelligence reports. Zara felt a growing excitement as she realized the implications. If this human had indeed encountered hegemony forces and escaped to tell about it, the information they carried could be invaluable. And if their ship's innovative engineering was any indication, humans might represent exactly the kind of fresh thinking their kingdom needed. A soft chime indicated that Prince Kelvith was attempting to contact her through the palace communication system. For a moment, she was tempted to simply ignore it, but diplomatic necessity eventually won out. Princess, came Kelvith's voice, carefully controlled but with an undertone of irritation. I had hoped we might continue our discussions this evening. There are several aspects of our potential alliance, that require clarification. I'm afraid that we'll have to wait, Prince Kelvith, Zara replied smoothly. We have a situation requiring immediate attention. I'm sure you understand the demands of leadership. There was a pause before Kelvith responded, his tone becoming more formal. Of course, Princess. However, I should mention that I have other obligations that may require my departure within the next few days. I'd hoped to conclude our negotiations more quickly. The implied threat was clear. Accept his proposal quickly or lose the opportunity entirely. It was exactly the kind of pressure tactic that confirmed all of Zara's suspicions about his character. I appreciate your candor, Prince, she replied with equal formality. I'm sure that whatever decision is reached will be in the best interests of both our peoples. As she ended the communication, Zara found herself smiling for the first time since Kelvith's arrival. The unconscious human and their remarkable ship represented a welcome distraction from the dreary business of rejecting another inadequate suitor. More than that, they represented possibility, the chance that somewhere in the galaxy, there are people who approach problems with creativity and innovation rather than convention and protocol. The medical team leader approached again with another update. Princess, the human is showing signs of regaining consciousness. Brain activity is increasing and vital signs are strengthening. If you wish to be present when they wake, now would be an appropriate time. Zara nodded and made her way to the medical bay, leaving the engineering teams to continue their examination of the ship. As she walked through the palace corridors, she found herself genuinely curious about what this human would be like. Would they be another disappointing example of galactic mediocrity, or might they prove to be something different? The medical bay was equipped with the most advanced healing technology available to Valdorian science. The human lay in a bioregeneration pod, surrounded by gentle fields of healing energy that promoted rapid cellular repair. Despite their injuries, Zara could see that they possessed the lean, practical build common to their species, compact but clearly strong, with the kind of muscle tone that came from actual physical work rather than cosmetic enhancement. As she watched, the human's eyes began to flutter open. They were brown, an unremarkable color by galactic standards, but there was something in their expression as consciousness returned that immediately caught her attention. Even disoriented and injured, their gaze was sharp and analytical, taking in their surroundings with the quick assessment of someone accustomed to finding themselves in unfamiliar situations. The human tried to sit up, then winced as their injuries reminded them of their condition. Easy there, Zara said softly, stepping closer to the pod. You're safe. You're in the medical bay of the Valdorian Royal Palace. The human's eyes focused on her, and she saw surprise flicker across their features. Though whether at her presence, her appearance, or simply the situation itself, she couldn't tell. When they spoke, their voice was rougher than she had expected, with an accent that suggested they had learned Galactic Standard as a second language. Valdoris? How did I? They paused, memory clearly returning. My ship isn't intact. I had critical information that needs to reach. Your vessel is being examined by our technical teams, Zara assured them. You mentioned the hegemony in your distress call. What happened? The human's expression became grim. Scouting mission went wrong. Stumbled across a hegemony staging area. Massive fleet buildup in the Kepler expanse. They're planning something big, and I barely got away with the intel. They looked at her more carefully. You're Princess Zaratil, aren't you? I've heard about you. That was unexpected. Have you? I wasn't aware my reputation had reached the Terran Federation. A slight smile crossed the human's face despite their obvious pain. Word gets around about a princess who tells suitors exactly what she thinks of them. Some of the galaxy finds that refreshingly honest. Zara felt a surprising flush of pleasure at the compliment. When was the last time someone had described her honesty as refreshing rather than problematic? What's your name? She asked. Marcus Chun. Officially, I'm a diplomatic courier. Unofficially, they shrugged carefully. I go places and find things out. And what did you find out about the hegemony? Marcus's expression became deadly serious. They're not just planning another expansion. This is different. They're preparing for total conquest. The fleet I saw could crush any single kingdom or federation in known space. and they have new technology, stuff I've never seen before. As Marcus provided more details about what they had discovered, Zara felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. The hegemony wasn't planning to conquer territory. They were planning to conquer everything. The implications were staggering, and suddenly Prince Kelvith's outdated fleet and conventional thinking seemed not just inadequate, but dangerously naive. If war was truly coming on this scale, her kingdom would need allies who could think beyond traditional approaches to warfare and diplomacy. She looked at Marcus Chun, unconscious again, but breathing steadily, and found herself wondering what other surprises humanity might offer. Their engineering was certainly impressive, and their intelligence gathering had proven accurate in the past. But more than that, there was something about this human's direct, pragmatic approach that appealed to her. As she prepared to leave the medical bay, one final thought occurred to her. For the first time since this ordeal with suitors had begun, she had encountered someone who hadn't immediately tried to impress her with titles, wealth, or political connections. Marcus had simply told her what she needed to know and treated her as a person rather than a prize. It was a refreshing change indeed. Marcus Chun woke to the soft hum of medical equipment and the subtle scent of ozone that seemed to permeate everything in the Valdorian palace. His body felt remarkably good considering he had been half dead when he arrived. Whatever healing technology these people used, it was significantly more advanced than standard Federation medical equipment. He sat up carefully, testing his range of motion. The burns along his left arm had been completely healed, leaving only faint lines where the worst damage had been. More impressive still, the concussion that had been threatening to shut down his higher cognitive functions was completely gone. He felt better than he had in months. "Impressive, isn't it?" came a voice from the entrance to the medical bay. Marcus looked up to see Princess Zaratil entering, carrying what appeared to be a portable data tablet. In the better lighting, he could see that she was even more striking than his first groggy impression had suggested. Valdorians were known for their elegant beauty, but Zara possessed something beyond that, an intensity in her violet eyes that spoke of genuine intelligence and fierce determination. Her silver hair caught the light as she moved, and there was a confidence in her bearing that had nothing to do with royal privilege and everything to do with personal competence. "Your medical technology is definitely beyond anything I've seen," Marcus admitted. "Thank you for the assistance. I know harboring refugees from hegemony attacks isn't exactly risk-free." Zara settled into a chair near his bed, her expression serious. "According to our analysis of your ship's data logs, you weren't just running from a random patrol. You discovered something significant." Marcus nodded grimly. "I was conducting reconnaissance in the Outer Rim when I stumbled across a hegemony staging area in the Kepler Expanse. What I found there." He paused, organizing his thoughts. "Princess, they're not planning another typical expansion. This is something entirely different." He activated a small holographic projector that had been recovered with his personal effects. The display showed tactical data and star charts marked with threat assessments and fleet positions. "The hegemony has assembled the largest military force in recorded galactic history. We're talking about 12 full battle fleets, supported by construction ships, supply vessels, and something I've never seen before, massive ships that appear to be designed specifically for planetary bombardment on a systematic scale." Zara studied the data with obvious expertise, her eyes tracking across the tactical projections with the kind of analytical precision that Marcus had learned to associate with truly competent military minds. "These bombardment vessels, you're suggesting they plan to destroy inhabited worlds rather than conquer them?" "That's exactly what I'm suggesting. The hegemony's traditional approach has been conquest and enslavement, but these new ships are designed for extermination. I think they've decided that managing conquered populations is more trouble than it's worth." The princess was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. When she spoke again, her voice carried a cold anger that Marcus found reassuring. At least someone in the royal family understood the gravity of the situation. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Based on their construction timeline and logistics patterns, I estimate 6 months before they begin active operations. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. Marcus gestured to another section of the display. But here's what really concerns me. They're not just planning to attack military targets. Intelligence suggests they intend to eliminate every advanced civilization in 3 sectors and start over with a clean slate. Zara stood abruptly and began pacing, her movements sharp with controlled tension. Have you shared this intelligence with other kingdoms? The Terran Federation must have contingency plans. Marcus laughed bitterly. That's where things get complicated. The Federation Council is split between those who want to take preemptive action and those who think we should try diplomacy first. As for other kingdoms, he shook his head. Most of them don't believe the threat is real. They think it's either Federation propaganda or another routine hegemony expansion that won't reach their territories. Idiots, Zara said flatly. What about military alliances? Surely someone recognizes the need for coordinated defense. A few smaller federations have started quiet preparations, but nothing like what we need to face this threat. Most of the major powers are either too confident in their own defenses or too busy with internal politics to take decisive action. Marcus watched as the princess continued her restless pacing, clearly working through strategic calculations. There was something fascinating about watching her think. He could almost see the wheels turning as she considered options and contingencies. Tell me about your ship, she said suddenly. Our engineers are calling it the most innovative design they've ever seen. How did the Federation develop such advanced technology? Marcus smiled at that. The Federation didn't develop it. I did. That's my personal vessel, built over the past 8 years using components and techniques from dozens of different civilizations. That stopped Zara's pacing entirely. You designed and built that ship yourself? With help from friends and colleagues, yes. See, that's the thing about human engineering. We don't believe in technological purity. If someone else has figured out a better way to solve a problem, we adapt it, improve it, and integrate it with our own innovations. Zara sat back down, leaning forward with obvious interest. But the power coupling systems alone should be incompatible. You're using Valdorian crystal matrices with Kethmoran metallurgy and what appears to be modified Zenith computational cores. Exactly, Marcus said, his enthusiasm overcoming his diplomatic restraint. Everyone said it couldn't be done, but that's because they were thinking in terms of standard applications. I developed new harmonic resonance protocols that allow the different technologies to work together instead of fighting each other. For the next hour, they discussed technical details with an intensity that surprised them both. Marcus found himself explaining not just what he had done, but why. The philosophical approach that drove human engineering philosophy. Zara proved to be not just knowledgeable, but genuinely innovative, suggesting improvements and asking questions that pushed his thinking in new directions. Remarkable, she said finally. You've essentially created a completely new class of vessel by refusing to accept conventional limitations. That's what humans do, Marcus replied. We look at the rules, figure out why they exist, and then find ways to work around them when they don't serve our purposes. A soft chime indicated an incoming communication. Zara activated a holographic interface, and the image of Chancellor Thaimon appeared, looking even more agitated than usual. Your Highness, Prince Kelvith is requesting an immediate audience. He seems displeased with the delay in responding to his proposal. He's also asking about the Terran vessel in our docking bay. Zara's expression became carefully neutral. Inform Prince Kelvith that I'll meet with him shortly. And, Chancellor, the human ship is classified under diplomatic protection protocols. After the communication ended, Marcus raised an eyebrow. Prince Kelvith? Let me guess. Another suitor hoping to secure an alliance through marriage. The 14th won this cycle, Zara said with obvious distaste. He represents the Kethmoran's 7th house, and seems to believe that offering me access to his outdated fleet should be sufficient to win my hand. Marcus studied her expression carefully. You don't seem particularly enthusiastic about the arrangement. Would you be? He sees marriage as a business transaction and me as a particularly valuable asset to be acquired. She stood again, smoothing down her practical clothing. I suppose I should go deal with him before he becomes even more insufferable. Mind if I ask you something? Marcus said as she prepared to leave. Go ahead. Why haven't you found someone you actually want to marry? I mean, you're intelligent, accomplished, beautiful, and heir to one of the most advanced kingdoms in the galaxy. There must be someone out there who interests you. Zara paused at the entrance to the medical bay, considering her answer. Perhaps the problem is that most people see the crown before they see the person. When someone approaches me as Princess Zaratiel, heir to the Valdorian throne, they're already thinking about what they can gain from the association. Very few people have ever been interested in Zara the engineer or Zara the person. After she left, Marcus found himself thinking about that conversation. There had been something in her voice, not self-pity, but a kind of resigned disappointment that struck him as profoundly sad. Here was someone with remarkable capabilities who had never found anyone who appreciated her for who she actually was. He was still pondering this when Chief Engineer Valkyris arrived to discuss his ship. The multi-armed Valdorian was practically vibrating with excitement about the technical innovations he had discovered. Master Chun, Valkyris began, using the formal address appropriate for a recognized expert. Your vessel represents a paradigm shift in engineering philosophy. Would you be willing to explain some of the integration techniques you developed? For the next several hours, Marcus found himself in the kind of technical discussion that he rarely got to enjoy. Valkyris was not only knowledgeable, but creative, suggesting modifications and improvements that built on the hybrid approach Marcus had pioneered. You know, Valkyris said during a brief pause, Princess Zara would find this conversation fascinating. She's one of our most innovative engineers, though her royal duties rarely allow her to pursue technical work full-time. That surprised Marcus. The princess is an engineer. Oh yes, quite accomplished. She designed the modifications to our defensive grid that improved efficiency by over 30%. She's also been working on something she calls adaptive shield harmonics that could revolutionize defensive technology. Valkyris's expression became slightly worried. Though I fear her technical work may have to take a back seat to politics if this marriage alliance proceeds. Marcus felt an unexpected surge of irritation at that prospect. The idea that someone with Zara's obvious capabilities might be forced into a political marriage with someone who couldn't appreciate her intelligence seemed like a terrible waste. Their technical discussion was interrupted by the arrival of several palace guards, led by a stern-faced officer who looked distinctly uncomfortable. Master Chun, the officer began formally. Prince Kelvith has requested your presence for questioning regarding recent hegemony activities. As a representative of the Terran Federation, your insights would be valuable. Marcus recognized a politely phrased demand when he heard one. Of course, I'd be happy to share what I can within the bounds of diplomatic protocols. As they made their way through the palace corridors, Marcus found himself impressed once again by Valdorian architecture. The living crystal walls seemed to respond to the presence of occupants, providing gentle illumination and displaying abstract patterns that were somehow both alien and beautiful. Prince Kelvith was waiting in a formal reception chamber, attended by several advisors and what appeared to be military officers. Up close, the Kethmoran prince was indeed impressive by conventional standards. Tall, muscular, and possessed of the kind of commanding presence that many species found intimidating. Master Chun, Kelvith began, his voice carrying the formal courtesy that barely concealed underlying hostility. Thank you for agreeing to this discussion. I understand you bring intelligence regarding hegemony activities. I do, Marcus replied carefully, though I should note that some details remain classified under Federation protocols. Kelvith waved dismissively. Of course. However, as we're discussing mutual security concerns, I'm sure you understand the importance of complete cooperation. For the next 30 minutes, Kelvith grilled Marcus about the intelligence he had gathered, focusing particularly on hegemony fleet strength and projected timelines. Marcus provided what information he could while being careful not to reveal Federation strategic capabilities or ongoing operations. What became increasingly clear during the questioning was that Kelvith viewed the hegemony threat primarily as an opportunity. Several times, he made comments about how the crisis might create opportunities for strong leadership and decisive action that would reshape the political landscape. Interesting perspective, Marcus said finally. Most military analysts I know are more concerned with defense than with political opportunities. Kelvith's smile was cold and calculating. Master Chun, you represent a young civilization with a limited understanding of galactic politics. Sometimes crisis creates the conditions necessary for progress. Before Marcus could respond to that particularly arrogant statement, Princess Zura entered the chamber. Her expression was carefully controlled, but Marcus had learned to read the subtle signs of her growing irritation. Prince Kelvith, she said with formal courtesy, I trust you're finding Master Chen's intelligence briefing informative? Indeed, Princess. Master Chun has provided valuable insights into the scope of the threat we face. It reinforces my conviction that immediate action is necessary, beginning with the formal alliance between our houses. Zara's violet eyes flickered with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as barely controlled anger. And what form would this immediate action take? Combined fleet operations under unified command, integrated defense strategies, and the technological cooperation that would naturally flow from our marriage. Kelvith moved closer to Zara, his body language subtly possessive. With Kethmoran military strength and Valdorian technical capabilities, we would be well-positioned not just to defend against the hegemony, but to emerge as a dominant force in the post-conflict galaxy. Interesting, Zara said quietly, and who precisely would command these combined operations? Naturally, military command would fall to those with the most extensive experience in large-scale operations. The Seventh House has commanded fleet actions across multiple sectors. Marcus watched this exchange with growing fascination and alarm. Kelvith wasn't just proposing an alliance. He was laying the groundwork for what amounted to a takeover. Under the guise of marriage and mutual defense, he would gain control of Valdorian technology and effectively absorb their kingdom into his own power structure. What was more disturbing was how smoothly he was presenting these plans. This wasn't the crude grab for power that Marcus had expected from an arrogant noble. This was sophisticated political maneuvering by someone who understood exactly how to exploit a crisis. Prince Kelvith, Marcus interjected, your approach assumes that conventional fleet tactics will be effective against hegemony forces. From what I observed, they've developed new technologies that may require completely different strategic approaches. Kelvith turned toward him with obvious irritation. Master Chun, while I appreciate the Federation's creativity in engineering matters, military strategy is best left to those with proper training and experience. Of course, Marcus replied mildly, though I notice that conventional military training hasn't prevented the hegemony from conquering 17 systems in the past 2 years. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kelvitha's advisors exchanged uncomfortable glances, and even his military officers looked uncertain. It was clearly not the kind of challenge they were accustomed to hearing directed at their prince. Master Chun, Kelvith said with dangerous quiet, are you suggesting that established military doctrine is inadequate? I'm suggesting that fighting the same war the same way and expecting different results is the definition of tactical insanity, Marcus replied. The hegemony keeps winning because they adapt faster than their opponents. If we want to beat them, we need to think differently about everything: strategy, technology, alliances, everything. Princess Zara had been watching this exchange with obvious interest. What would you suggest, Master Chun? Marcus looked around the room, noting the mix of skeptical and hostile expressions. Asymmetric warfare. Instead of trying to match their fleet strength, we make them fight on terms that favor us. Use mobility over mass, innovation over convention, and coordination over hierarchy. Coordinated by whom? Kelvith demanded. Some sort of democratic council? Military operations require clear command structure and decisive leadership. They require effective leadership, Marcus corrected. That's not the same thing as autocratic control. The argument might have continued, but it was interrupted by an urgent alert chime. A holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, showing the image of Admiral Korvac. Your Highness, the Admiral began, his expression grim. "We're receiving emergency transmissions from multiple sources. Long-range sensors have detected massive fleet movements in the hegemony territories. It appears they've accelerated their timeline." Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. How massive? Preliminary estimates suggest at least 8 battle fleets have begun moving toward the outer territories. Their projected course suggests they'll reach the first inhabited systems within 6 weeks. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations and urgent questions, but Marcus was focused on Princess Zara's reaction. Her face had gone pale, but her expression remained controlled and analytical. Even in crisis, she was thinking rather than simply reacting. Prince Kelvith, meanwhile, was already issuing orders to his advisors about recalling his fleet and preparing for immediate departure. "Princess," he said urgently, "this changes everything. We need to formalize our alliance immediately. Every hour of delay could prove catastrophic." Zara looked at him with an expression that Marcus couldn't quite read. "You're absolutely right, Prince Kelvith. This crisis does change everything." But something in her tone suggested that the changes she was contemplating might not be the ones Kelvith was expecting. As the meeting dissolved into urgent planning sessions and emergency communications, Marcus found himself wondering what role a single human engineer could play in a galactic war. More immediately, he wondered what Princess Zaratil was really thinking behind that carefully controlled expression. Whatever was coming next, he had the feeling that conventional approaches and traditional alliances weren't going to be sufficient. The galaxy was about to discover whether innovation and adaptability could triumph over overwhelming force. And somehow he suspected that the wild princess who had defied every expectation might be exactly the kind of leader this crisis demanded. The emergency council session stretched deep into the night, with representatives from across the Valdorian kingdom participating via holographic link. The massive war room beneath the palace had been designed for exactly this kind of crisis, though no one had expected to need it quite so soon. Princess Zara stood before the central tactical display, no longer the reluctant participant in marriage negotiations, but clearly in her element as a military strategist. Marcus watched from his position as a Federation observer, impressed by how naturally she had assumed command of the situation. Current intelligence suggests the hegemony will strike the outer rim systems first, she was explaining to the assembled commanders and ministers. Their pattern has been to establish forward bases before pushing deeper into inhabited space. That gives us perhaps 4 weeks before they threaten our borders. Admiral Korvac manipulated the holographic display to show projected attack routes. Our defensive grid can handle conventional assault forces, but if Master Chin's intelligence is accurate, we're facing something far beyond normal parameters. Prince Kelvith, who had remained largely silent during the technical briefings, finally spoke up. "Princess, while I appreciate your enthusiasm for military planning, perhaps it would be more appropriate for experienced commanders to handle strategic decisions. I have generals who have actually fought in major campaigns." The room fell silent. Marcus could see the tension radiating from several of the Valdorian officers, while others watched to see how their princess would respond to such a direct challenge to her authority. Zara turned to face Kelvith with an expression of polite interest. "Of course, Prince. I'd be very interested to hear from these experienced commanders. Which major campaigns have they fought in?" Kelvith gestured to one of his military advisors, a scarred Keth-Moran with the bearing of a career soldier. "General Vexthor led our forces during the Outer Rim consolidation and the Tributary Wars." "The Tributary Wars ended 8 years ago," Zara said thoughtfully. "And if I recall correctly, those conflicts involved primarily ground-based operations against technologically inferior opponents. Has General Vexthor had experience with large-scale fleet actions against peer-level civilizations?" The general's expression darkened slightly. "Your Highness, military experience transfers across different operational environments. The principles of command remain constant regardless of specific circumstances." Marcus almost smiled at that response. It was exactly the kind of conventional military thinking that had allowed the hegemony to steamroll through multiple star systems. The idea that experience fighting inferior opponents would translate to success against an adaptive, technologically advanced enemy was dangerously naive. An interesting perspective, Zara replied diplomatically. Master Chun, you've observed hegemony tactics firsthand. In your opinion, would traditional fleet engagement protocols be effective against their current capabilities? Marcus appreciated being included in the discussion, though he could feel the hostility radiating from Kelvith's entourage. Based on what I've seen, the hegemony has evolved beyond conventional warfare. They use coordinated swarm tactics, adaptive shielding, and real-time tactical modification of their weapon systems. Traditional line-of-battle approaches would be catastrophic against that kind of flexibility. Elaborate, Admiral Korvac requested, leaning forward with obvious interest. They don't fight fair, Marcus said simply. Instead of massing forces for direct confrontation, they use multiple small units to probe for weaknesses, then concentrate overwhelming force at the specific points where defenses break down. By the time you realize where the real attack is coming from, your fleet positioning is completely wrong. General Vex Thor snorted dismissively. Cowardly tactics. No honor in such methods. Honor doesn't matter when you're dead, Marcus replied bluntly. The hegemony has conquered 17 systems in 2 years, using these cowardly tactics against opponents who thought superior honor and traditional courage would be sufficient. Prince Kelvith's expression had been growing increasingly sour throughout this exchange. Master Chun, while your Federation's unconventional approaches may have some merit, the reality is that large-scale warfare requires massive resources and unified command structure. Individual cleverness cannot substitute for overwhelming force properly applied. You're absolutely right about the need for overwhelming force, Zara said unexpectedly, which is why we're going to need allies with truly advanced capabilities, not just large numbers of conventional ships. She activated a new section of the tactical display, showing star charts marked with the locations of various civilizations and federations. The Terran Federation has some of the most innovative engineering in known space. The Zenith Commonwealth possesses unmatched computational capabilities. The Mektari Collective has developed the most advanced energy weapons technology available. Separately, none of U.S. can match hegemony fleet strength. Together we'd have a hodgepodge of incompatible technologies and conflicting command structures, Kelvith interrupted. Princess, coalition warfare is notoriously difficult even under ideal circumstances. Against an opponent like the hegemony, such an alliance would collapse within weeks. Marcus found himself studying Zara's expression as she considered Kelvith's objection. He could see her working through the problem, and he had the distinct impression that she was already several steps ahead of everyone else in the room. You raise valid concerns about compatibility, she admitted. Traditional coalition warfare is indeed problematic. But what if we approach the alliance differently? She manipulated the display to show technological specifications rather than fleet positions. Instead of trying to coordinate multiple separate forces, what if we created integrated units that combine the best capabilities of each civilization? Human adaptability, Valdorian crystals technology, Zenith computational power, Mektari energy systems, all working together in individual vessels and squadrons. The room erupted in excited discussions as engineers and tactical officers began considering the implications. Marcus felt a surge of admiration for Zara's strategic thinking. She wasn't just proposing a defensive alliance. She was envisioning a completely new approach to interstellar warfare. General Vex Thor, however, looked skeptical. Your Highness, with respect, such integration would require years of development and testing. We don't have that kind of time. We don't have time for traditional approaches either, Zara replied. Master Chun, how long did it take you to develop the hybrid systems in your ship? Marcus thought for a moment. The basic integration took about 6 months of intensive work. But that was starting from scratch and working alone. With proper resources and coordinated effort. 3 months, Zara said confidently. Maybe less if we can establish direct technical cooperation between the major powers. Prince Kelvith had been growing visibly agitated throughout this discussion. Princess, you're talking about revolutionary changes to fundamental military doctrine based on theoretical possibilities. The seventh house offers proven strength, immediate availability, and tested command structures. We can't afford to gamble everything on untested innovations. Before Zara could respond, another alert chimed through the chamber. This time, the holographic display showed Chancellor Daimon, looking even more distressed than usual. Your Majesties, he began formally, addressing both King Aldrich and Queen Lisanel, who had joined the session via remote link. We're receiving urgent diplomatic communications from multiple sources. The hegemony has issued what appears to be an ultimatum to all civilizations in the threatened sectors. The display shifted to show a recording of the hegemony message. The speaker was a tall, imposing figure in dark armor whose species Marcus didn't recognize, something that sent a chill down his spine, since his intelligence work had required him to learn about most major galactic civilizations. To the various lesser civilizations currently occupying territories designated for hegemony expansion, the figure began, its voice carrying an inhuman resonance that suggested electronic modification. You have 72 standard hours to surrender all military assets and prepare for integration into hegemony administrative structures. Civilizations that comply with these directives will be permitted to maintain limited autonomous governance under hegemony oversight. Those that resist will be eliminated entirely. The message continued for several more minutes, detailing the specific terms of surrender and the consequences of resistance. When it ended, the war room was completely silent. Marcus broke the silence first. 72 hours. That's not nearly enough time for any kind of military preparation. Which is exactly the point, Admiral Korvac said grimly. They want to force immediate surrender decisions before anyone can mount effective resistance. Prince Kelvith stood abruptly. This changes everything. Princess, we need to formalize our alliance immediately and begin coordinating our defensive preparations. The Seventh House fleet can reach Valdorian space within 48 hours. Zara looked at him with an unreadable expression. And what would you propose we do once your fleet arrives, Prince? Fight a conventional defensive battle against overwhelming odds. I propose we fight with honor and determination, as civilized beings have always done when faced with tyranny. Kelvith's voice carried the ring of noble conviction, but Marcus could hear the underlying desperation. Better to die free than live as slaves. Better still to live free, Zara replied quietly, which requires us to think beyond conventional approaches. She turned to address the entire assembly. I appreciate Prince Kelvith's offer of alliance, but I believe our kingdom needs a different kind of partnership if we're going to survive this crisis. The room suddenly felt charged with tension. Marcus could see that several people had begun to suspect what Zara was building toward, while others remained focused on the immediate military threat. King Aldrich's voice came through the communication link with careful neutrality. Princess, what are you proposing? I'm proposing that we form a technical alliance with the Terran Federation and other innovative civilizations, focused on developing the kind of adaptive, integrated approach that actually has a chance against hegemony forces. She gestured toward Marcus. Master Chen's ship proves that such integration is possible. His intelligence proves that conventional approaches have failed repeatedly. Prince Kelvith's expression had become thunderous. Princess, you're talking about abandoning a proven alliance with an established power in favor of what? Experimental cooperation with a minor civilization that has existed in space for barely 3 centuries. I'm talking about choosing effectiveness over prestige, Zara replied firmly. The Federation may be young, but their adaptive engineering and innovative tactics offer something we desperately need, the ability to evolve faster than our enemies. Marcus felt a surge of both pride and terror at being associated with such a dramatic shift in Valdorian policy. Princess, I should mention that any formal alliance would require approval from the Federation Council, and they're divided on how to respond to the hegemony threat. Then perhaps it's time for new leadership to emerge, Zara said with a slight smile. Both in the Federation and elsewhere. The implications of that statement sent ripples of shock through the assembly. Prince Kelvith, in particular, looked as though he had been physically struck. "Princess," he said with dangerous quiet, "you're talking about rejecting not just my proposal, but the entire established order of galactic politics. Do you have any idea what the consequences of such actions might be?" "Yes," Zara replied simply. "Success or death. Those appear to be our only real options at this point." Before anyone could respond to this dramatic statement, yet another alert chimed through the chamber. This time, however, the source was not official communications, but the palace's defensive sensors. Multiple ships entering the system, Admiral Korvac reported, his voice tense. Configurations suggest hegemony scout vessels, but they're not displaying standard approach protocols. The main display shifted to show the incoming ships. There were 5 of them, moving in a formation that Marcus immediately recognized as a precursor to either diplomatic contact or tactical assessment. Given the ultimatum they had just received, he suspected it wasn't diplomacy. "How long until they reach orbit?" Zara asked. 6 hours at current approach speed." "But, Princess, if they're here to enforce the surrender ultimatum, then we'd better have our answer ready," she finished. "Admiral, bring our defensive grid to full readiness." "Master Chun, I need to know everything you can tell us about hegemony scout capabilities and probable tactical intentions." As the chamber erupted into urgent activity, Marcus found himself impressed once again by Zara's ability to maintain focus under pressure. While others were still processing the political implications of her rejection of Prince Kelvith's proposal, she had already shifted to addressing the immediate tactical situation. Prince Kelvith, however, was clearly struggling to accept what had just happened. "Princess," he said, his voice carrying a mix of anger and desperation, "you're making a catastrophic mistake. My fleet represents your best hope for survival. Without it, we'll find another way," Zara replied, not taking her attention away from the tactical displays. "Prince Kelvith, I appreciate your offer and I understand your disappointment. But I cannot accept an alliance that would require me to surrender my kingdom's independence in exchange for protection that may not even be effective." Marcus watched this exchange with growing fascination. He had witnessed plenty of political negotiations during his intelligence work, but he had never seen anyone reject a powerful alliance with such calm certainty, especially not when facing an existential threat. What struck him most was that Zara wasn't making an emotional decision based on personal dislike for Kelvith. She was making a strategic calculation that conventional approaches would fail, and therefore conventional alliances were not just useless, but potentially counterproductive. "Master Chun," she said, turning toward him with an expression that was both determined and slightly apologetic, "I realize I may have just committed your federation to an alliance you're not authorized to make. If you need to disavow my statements." "Actually," Marcus said slowly, "I think you may have just given me the opportunity to present the Federation Council with a proposal they can't afford to reject." He activated his personal communication device and began composing an urgent message to Federation headquarters. "Princess, if you're serious about this technical alliance approach, I have some ideas about how to make it work. But we'll need to move fast, both to stay ahead of the hegemony and to present our respective governments with a functioning model before they can object to it." For the first time since the crisis began, Marcus saw genuine optimism in Zara's expression. "What did you have in mind? Remember how I told you that my ship was built by integrating technologies from multiple civilizations? What if we could do the same thing with entire fleets? Not just combining existing ships, but building new vessels specifically designed around multi-species technical cooperation." The excitement in the room was palpable as engineers and tacticians began to grasp the implications. This wasn't just about building better ships. It was about creating an entirely new paradigm for interstellar cooperation. Prince Kelvith, meanwhile, had gone very still. Marcus could practically see him calculating the political implications of what was happening. If Zara's approach succeeded, it would represent a fundamental shift and how galactic civilizations related to each other. The old hierarchies based on military strength and traditional alliances would become irrelevant. Princess, Kelvith said finally, I urge you to reconsider. What you're proposing is not just militarily risky. It's politically revolutionary. The established powers will not tolerate such changes to the galactic order. Then, perhaps it's time for new powers to emerge, Zara replied, beginning with civilizations that value innovation over tradition and cooperation over domination. As if to underscore the urgency of their situation, Admiral Korvac provided another update on the approaching hegemony vessels. Princess, the scout ships have altered course slightly. They appear to be heading directly for our primary orbital platform rather than the planet itself, which suggests they want to deliver a message rather than begin an immediate attack, Marcus observed. That gives us a little more time to prepare our response. Zara nodded thoughtfully. Time we'll use to begin this new alliance immediately. Master Chun, how quickly can you contact your most innovative colleagues in the Federation? I want to begin technical integration experiments while we're negotiating with the hegemony. Marcus smiled at her determination. Give me 2 hours, and I can have the best human engineers in 3 sectors standing by for holographic conference. But, Princess, are you sure you want to commit to this path? Once we start, there's no going back to traditional approaches. Master Chun, Zara replied with the first genuinely warm smile he had seen from her. I stopped believing in traditional approaches about 14 suitors ago. It's time to try something that might actually work. As the war room erupted into urgent planning and preparation, Marcus found himself thinking that perhaps the galaxy's best hope for survival lay not in the massive fleets and ancient hierarchies that had dominated interstellar politics for millennia, but in the innovative spirit of a wild princess who had always refused to accept limitations. Now they would all discover whether defiance and creativity could triumph over overwhelming force and ancient hatred. The next few hours would determine not just the fate of the Valdorian kingdom, but possibly the future of free civilization throughout known space. The next 18 hours transformed the Valdorian Palace into something resembling a combination research facility, military command center, and diplomatic hub. Princess Zara had essentially turned her rejection of Prince Kelvith into the foundation for an entirely new approach to galactic defense, and somehow, impossibly, it was beginning to work. Marcus stood in what had formerly been the palace's ceremonial ballroom, now converted into a massive technical workspace where human, Valdorian, Zenith, and Mektari engineers worked side by side on integration protocols that shouldn't have been possible. Holographic displays showed everything from power coupling diagrams to tactical formation analyses, while the air hummed with the excited energy of people pushing the boundaries of what their civilizations thought was achievable. The harmonic resonance between Valdorian crystals and human adaptive matrices is actually creating an amplification effect we didn't predict, Dr. Sarah Kim was explaining to Zara and Chief Engineer Valkyris. The human physicist had arrived on one of the first Federation ships to respond to Marcus's urgent summons. Instead of just combining our capabilities, we're seeing emergent properties that exceed the sum of the parts. Zara leaned over the technical displays with the intense focus that Marcus had learned to associate with her problem-solving mode. Show me the power output calculations again. If this amplification is consistent, it changes everything about how we approach defensive systems. The past day had revealed aspects of the princess that even Marcus hadn't fully anticipated. Her technical expertise was impressive enough, but her ability to coordinate experts from multiple civilizations and get them working toward common goals was extraordinary. She seemed to instinctively understand how to bridge the gaps between different scientific traditions and engineering philosophies. Princess, came Admiral Korvac's voice through the communication system. The hegemony delegation has arrived at the orbital platform. They're requesting immediate transport to the palace for formal presentation of their terms. Marcus looked up from the propulsion system integration he had been working on with a team of Zenith computational specialists. The hegemony ships had been holding position at the edge of the system for the past 12 hours, apparently waiting for some kind of response to their ultimatum. Now, It seemed they were ready to make their demands in person. "Escort them to the main reception hall," Zara replied. "Full diplomatic protocols, but maintain security alert status. And, Admiral, make sure they get a good look at our current research projects as they pass through the palace." Marcus smiled at that. She wanted the hegemony representatives to see exactly what they were dealing with. Not just another conventional kingdom that could be intimidated into surrender, but an active center of technological innovation with powerful new allies. "Princess," Dr. Kim said quietly, "are you sure it's wise to reveal the extent of our cooperation? If the hegemony realizes what we're developing, then they'll understand that conquest isn't going to be as simple as they anticipated," Zara replied firmly. "Sometimes the best defense is making your opponents reconsider whether the attack is worth the cost." As they prepared for the hegemony delegation, Marcus reflected on how dramatically the situation had changed since his arrival. Prince Kelvith had departed in obvious fury 12 hours ago, taking his fleet and his offer of alliance with him. Several other Valdorian nobles had expressed concerns about the princess's radical departure from traditional diplomatic approaches. But for every voice of caution, there seemed to be two more expressing excitement about the possibilities that were opening up. The technical teams were making breakthrough discoveries almost hourly. The arriving Federation ships were bringing not just military support, but cutting-edge research equipment. And even civilizations that had never cooperated before were finding common ground in the face of the hegemony threat. The hegemony delegation consisted of 3 figures in the same type of dark armor that had appeared in their ultimatum broadcast. Up close, Marcus could see that the armor was more than just protective. It was integrated technology that enhanced their bearers' physical capabilities and provided direct neural interfaces to their equipment. Whatever species the hegemony represented originally, they had modified themselves extensively. "Princess Zeratil of the Valdorian Kingdom," the lead delegate began, its voice carrying that same inhuman resonance from the recorded message. "I am Hegemon Prime Vexka. I come to receive your formal surrender and to begin the integration process." Zara stood before her throne with an expression of polite attention, wearing formal court robes that somehow managed to make her look both regal and subtly threatening. "Hegemon Prime Vexka, welcome to Valdoris. I appreciate your directness, though I'm afraid your assumption may be premature." "There is no assumption, Princess. Your kingdom, like all civilizations in this sector, will submit to hegemony authority or be eliminated. The choice is merely between peaceful integration or total destruction." Marcus watched from his position among the assembled court officials, noting the casual way the hegemony delegate delivered what amounted to a death threat. There was something disturbing about their absolute confidence, as if the idea that anyone might successfully resist them was inconceivable. "I understand your position," Zara replied calmly. "However, I believe you may be operating under some misconceptions about our current capabilities. Perhaps you'd like to tour our technical facilities before we discuss terms?" The lead delegate's helmeted head tilted slightly, the first sign of anything resembling curiosity they had displayed. "Explain." "We've recently entered into cooperative agreements with several other advanced civilizations. Our combined technical and military capabilities may be more substantial than your intelligence indicates." What followed was perhaps the most unusual diplomatic tour in galactic history. Zara personally escorted the hegemony delegation through the converted palace areas where Federation, Zenith, and Mektari specialists were working alongside Valdorian engineers on integrated systems that represented completely new approaches to technology. Marcus accompanied the tour group, watching the delegates' reactions carefully. Despite their helmets and armor, he could sense growing tension among the hegemony representatives as they observed the scale and sophistication of the cooperative effort. "Interesting," Hegemon Prime Vexka said finally, as they observed a test firing of a combined human-Valdorian energy weapon that achieved power levels significantly beyond anything either civilization could produce alone. "You have achieved some measure of technical integration. This is unexpected. We find cooperation more effective than conquest," Zara replied mildly. Our allies chose to work with us because they saw mutual benefit, not because they were forced into submission. The second delegate, who had remained silent throughout the tour, finally spoke. Cooperation is inefficient. Multiple perspectives create confusion and delay decisive action. The hegemony succeeds because we have eliminated such weaknesses. Marcus found that comment particularly revealing. You've eliminated the ability to adapt and innovate, he said quietly. That's not strength. It's brittleness waiting to be shattered. All three delegates turned toward him with what felt like sudden, intense focus. You are the human intelligence operative, Vexka stated. Your interference has been noted. My cooperation has been welcomed. Marcus corrected. There's a difference. The tour concluded in the main engineering bay, where a prototype vessel was nearing completion. The ship was unlike anything that had ever existed, combining the sleek efficiency of Valdorian crystal technology with the adaptive versatility of human engineering, the computational precision of Zenith systems, and the devastating energy projection capabilities of Mekhtari weapons. This vessel represents the future of interstellar cooperation, Zara explained to the increasingly tense delegates. Built not by conquest, but by choice, stronger than any single civilization could create alone. Hegemon Prime Vexka studied the prototype for several long minutes before responding. Princess Zaratil, your technical achievements are indeed impressive. However, you appear to misunderstand the nature of the choice before you. The delegate activated a small holographic projector, filling the space with images of devastated worlds and burning cities. These are the 17 systems that chose resistance over integration. As you can see, their technical innovations proved inadequate. Marcus felt his stomach clench as he recognized several of the destroyed locations. These weren't just military targets. Entire civilizations have been systematically eliminated, their populations exterminated, and their worlds left as lifeless monuments to hegemony, ruthlessness. The hegemony does not negotiate. Vexka continued implacably. We offer integration to civilizations that demonstrate useful capabilities. Those that refuse are removed as obstacles to galactic order. Your kingdom's technical skills make you suitable for integration under appropriate supervision. Your defiance makes you suitable for elimination. Choose. The engineering bay had gone completely silent. Marcus could see the shock and fear in the faces of the various technical teams as they processed the implications of what they had just seen. The scale of destruction was beyond anything most civilizations had experienced in living memory. But Princess Zara's expression remained steady. I appreciate your candor, Hegemon Prime. However, I believe you may be underestimating our current situation. She activated the bay's main holographic display, showing real-time sensor readings from across the Valdorian system. What appeared was not the modest defensive force that had been in place when the hegemony scouts first arrived, but a growing fleet of vessels representing half a dozen different civilizations. In the past 18 hours, Zara explained calmly, we've been joined by allies who share our commitment to cooperative defense. The fleet you see includes advanced vessels from the Terran Federation, the Zenith Commonwealth, the Mekhtari Collective, and 3 smaller federations that have decided to join our alliance. Marcus watched the hegemony delegates process this information. Even through their armor and helmets, he could sense their surprise at the speed with which the multi-species alliance had formed. Numbers alone will not save you, Vexka said finally. The hegemony has faced coalitions before. They invariably collapse when faced with genuine pressure. This isn't a traditional coalition, Zara replied. It's something new, an integrated alliance based on shared innovation rather than mutual fear. Our ships aren't just fighting together, they're built together, using technologies and strategies that none of our civilizations could have developed alone. The princess gestured toward the prototype vessel. That ship can outmaneuver any hegemony vessel in your database because it uses adaptive propulsion systems your intelligence has never encountered. Its weapons can penetrate defenses you've never had to counter. Most importantly, Its crew represents the combined tactical knowledge of 6 different military traditions. Marcus realized what Zara was doing. She wasn't just rejecting the hegemony's demands. She was challenging their fundamental assumptions about warfare and conquest. By demonstrating that cooperation could produce capabilities that exceeded the sum of their individual parts, she was suggesting that the hegemony's approach was not just morally wrong, but strategically inferior. Hegemon Prime Vexka was silent for several long minutes, apparently communicating with superiors through some kind of internal communication system. When the delegate finally spoke again, there was something different in the tone, not quite uncertainty, but perhaps the first hint that absolute confidence was beginning to crack. Princess Zaratil, your alliance is indeed unexpected. However, the hegemony does not retreat from its objectives. If you refuse integration, we will bring sufficient force to eliminate all resistance, regardless of its nature or origin. Understand, Zara replied. And if you choose to attack us, you'll discover whether innovation and cooperation can triumph over overwhelming force and ancient hatred. Either way, this sector of the galaxy is about to witness something unprecedented. The formal diplomatic session that followed was unlike anything Marcus had ever observed. Instead of the usual careful negotiations and gradual concessions that characterized most interstellar disputes, this was essentially a philosophical debate about the nature of power and progress. The hegemony position was straightforward. Strength came from unity of purpose, elimination of dissent, and the application of superior force. Individual civilizations were chaotic and inefficient, requiring guidance and control to reach their full